Hi, my name is Jose Parra. Today we're going to be looking at inheritance and polymorphism. Inheritance occurs when we have a parent class that we will use to define general characteristics of whatever object we're trying to create, such as different variables or different characteristics, and then we would be creating subclasses that would extend or use all these variables that were used in the parent class and use it for their own to define what that subclass means. The purpose of doing this is that we're able to create different objects that all relate to the same basic definitions. In this example, I created a creature class that we would use to create enemies, players, and any other conceivable uh, creatures that we could use within a game. Then after we define the general characteristics of all these objects, we would define subclasses where we would define the special characteristics that makes a player different from an enemy or a player different from, let's say, an animal. By doing so, we can distinguish these different objects, but at the same time, they would all be able to use the same methods defined within the parent class because they would inherit these variables and methods. As you can see here, we always start with our public class, defining it to be a creature. Then we follow along by defining the variables that our subclasses will be using. This would be the health, damage, and the name. Next, we define a general constructor for any creature that we could come up with, where it would take in a name, the number for damage, and the number for health. And here we set name equal to those constructor. We set our variables equal to the constructors, the things we can put in the constructors. Next, we define our getters and setters for all these variables. This allows us to generate general getters and setters that a lot of our subclass created creatures or players will be able to use without having to rewrite them. Next, we're going to create a method that will just be printing out saying the creature runs with 4 legs. And we're going to explore how we can use this method and use it to create to morph it into something else. Next, we're going to be looking at our player class. And we're going to see that this player class is going to be able to do a lot of the things that any creature would be able to do, but we would be defining a player that would be slightly different from how we define our creature. So first we start by defining our player class. And we said the player class extends from the creature, meaning that it's getting all those values that are already defined within the creature. Next, we're going to be defining the thing that makes the player different. This would be the potions. And we generate again now our constructor to be able to construct any player that uses the name, health, damage, potions. And we define to be the follow along, since the name, the health, and the damage are exactly the same from the parent class. We can done it to be using super, meaning we're going to be using the constructor from the parent class that this class inherited. And next, again, we're going to now define our getters and setters for only the potions. Again, we won't have to define again the getters and setters for the health, the name, and the damage because it was inherited from the parent class or from the creature class. Now that we know that, we can use many of the different things that are found within our creature class, even though our player was generated from a different class. And the reason we can do this is because again, our player class would be a subclass of the creature. Next, we're going to explore how we can morph a method that was used within the creature class and create its own thing for a player class and see how we can use it differently. This was what we would call polymorphism, meaning we have a method that has multiple forms. However, certain things are executed depending on what type of object or who it's executing it. So first we're going to create a player. equals new player. And again, it's going to take in a name. A health. Damage. And potions. So now we create our player P. Next we're going to create a creature. We're going to call it R. That would be new creature. And again, now this one is going to take a name, health, and then an attack. Again, this one doesn't take potions because it's not a player, it's a creature, and we define it to be different. Now we're gonna call upon running, and we're gonna see how the player would be calling upon a different method, although they would be called the same. It would be printing out something else. So we call it as a player. It's gonna say that the player runs with 2 legs. However, we try to do with a creature. We say r.running. Then again, now it's calling upon and using the method that was defined within our creature. And this allows us to do various things because we can define similar methods that would be doing the same thing, but depending on which object uses them, it will be using them differently.